This presentation gives a brief overview of how Yarts, the Yosemite Area Regional Transportation System, came about and what we must do to stop this taxpayer-subsidized public transit boondoggle. The concept for Yarts came about as a result of the 1980 Yosemite General Management Plan, abbreviated GMP. One of its main goals was to eliminate all private vehicle access to Yosemite Valley by implementing a regional transportation system, which later became Yarts. To transition visitors to the idea of forced busing as the only way to access Yosemite Valley, the National Park Service began to incrementally remove day visitor parking. To date, more than 6,000 parking spaces have been removed from the valley. Yarts itself began in 1992 as a task force of representatives from the counties surrounding Yosemite National Park. Also included were the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, Caltrans, and the Federal Highway Administration. Their goal was to explore the feasibility of a regional transportation system while balancing the needs of the counties with the needs of the park. The task force idea seemed like a good one until money and political agendas entered the equation. The counties that would be affected by the proposed Yard system were Tuolumne, Mariposa, Madera, Merced, and Mono County. The corridors that were considered were Highway 140 and 120 from the west, 120 from the east from Lee Vining, and Highway 41 from the south, a total of 4 corridors. The infusion of money began after the 1997 Yosemite flood. Remember, never let a good crisis go to waste. As part of the $197 million flood emergency appropriation, Congress granted $35 million to the park for a transportation component. The Yarts organization also began picking up funding from state and federal agencies. In November of 1997, President Clinton signed an executive order targeting Grand Canyon, Zion, and Yosemite for vehicle reduction and mass transit implementation. Local businesses and residents never had any say in subsidizing this project with taxpayer dollars. More funding opportunities came in May of 1998 when Congress passed the Transportation Equity Act for the 21st Century, T-21, which funded various surface transportation programs at a total of $217 billion over 6 years. This act also granted National Park Service units the opportunity to influence decision-making on state plans by becoming active in state and local transportation planning inside as well as outside the park. This was like the fox guarding the henhouse. In June of 1999, Yarts Executive Director Jess Brown announced that a 2-year demonstration phase would begin in the summer of 2000. He projected 80,000 round-trip riders per year and an additional 30,000 subsidized employee round-trip riders for a total projection of 110,000 round-trip riders. The actual first-year ridership was only 30,000 round-trip riders, and these were primarily free employees as well as all riders free during the first month of service. This is similar to the current inflated projections we've seen on California's high-speed rail boondoggle. In November of 1999, local input from businesses and residents was trumped by regional decision-making when Mariposa, Merced, and Mono counties entered into a Joint Powers Agreement, or JPA, with Yarts. A perfect example of big government knows best. In May of 2000, Yarts began a 2-year experimental demonstration project to see if visitors would get out of their cars and ride a bus. After failing miserably to meet the first-year projections, Yarts canceled the second year of the demonstration and downgraded all of their projections. So where does Yarts get its funding? The answer? It does not have a steady source of income. It survives on grants, congressional earmarks, Park Service funding, Department of Transportation vouchers, some farebox revenue, and contributions from participating counties. This is like going to the casino each year and taking your chances, only in this case, the taxpayers are the casino. Currently, Yarts is available year-round on Highway 140 and seasonally on 120 East, but the 2 high-emphasis routes, which are Highway 41 and Highway 120 West, as identified in the state's Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan, fiercely resisted until this past summer when Tuolumne agreed to a demonstration service on Highway 120 West funded by the National Park Service and taxpayers. As soon as regional transportation is established on all 4 corridors into Yosemite, the park is in a position to more aggressively eliminate the remaining day visitor parking spaces in the valley. This would achieve the 1980 General Management Plan goal. Will Yarts benefit the local businesses in the gateway communities of Oakhurst, Mariposa, and Groveland? The answer is emphatically no. The National Park Service has failed to conduct a thorough NEPA analysis of day visitors to determine what eliminating cars and mandating buses will really cost the gateway communities. Yarts is a gamble of taxpayer money. Client surveys and the park's own studies predict that busing will degrade the visitor experience. Yarts will facilitate the conversion of Yosemite into an elitist experience. Only those with considerable discretionary income will be able to visit. On top of higher gate fees, plans to convert access from auto touring to bus travel will further impact the economically disadvantaged, with additional expenses resulting from increased dependence on the concessionaire. Mandatory busing will also discourage families with young children, the disabled, and the elderly. However, those who can afford to lodge with a concessionaire or who can secure one of the precious few campsites in the valley will still be able to drive their own vehicles. Yarts is a Trojan horse that will end up costing the county money. Why are taxpayers expected to subsidize choice? Wouldn't that be a private enterprise kind of thing? If buses become the primary mode of access to the park, counties and Caltrans will be forced to consider infrastructure changes. Madera has saved between $500,000 to $1 million by not participating in Yarts. Preliminary estimates on the annual operating cost for Yarts on Highway 41 range from approximately $1.8 to $2.4 million. The initial capital cost for the new buses ranges from $6 million to $9 million. The Yarts operating budget is already subsidized 85% by the taxpayers. The Yarts capital budget appears to be 100% subsidized by taxpayers. The Yarts operating budget is forecasting deficit spending for the foreseeable future. The Yarts operating and capital budgets are stealing needed millions of dollars that could be used for fixing roads, reducing government debt, paying for public safety, and so forth. A pilot expansion of Yarts from El Portal to Yosemite Valley in 2011 was deemed unsuccessful by Yarts' own document. The Yarts system continues to be a ridership failure. 12 years later, one-way ridership is 85,000, 135,000 fewer one-way riders than the first-year projection. The only way to make Yarts successful is to make bus access mandatory by removing visitor parking from the valley. How's this for giving us a choice? Yarts does not protect the environment. Diesel is the fuel of choice for mountain roads. Compressed natural gas buses, or CNG, are too expensive and require massive infrastructure changes. Hybrid buses don't work well on long-haul mountain trips. Yarts has failed to do a cumulative impact environmental analysis at full build-out. Instead, it aggressively works to expand the system a little at a time. This is incrementalism at its best. Get the camel's nose into the tent and expand from there. Where else have we seen this type of behavior? The EPA, anyone? Yarts destroys freedom of access. A leisurely 2.5-hour round trip by private vehicle from Oakhurst would become a stop-and-go 4 to 5-hour round trip by bus. It increases reliance on high-priced concessionaire food, goods, and services. Opportunities to stop along the way to take pictures, recover from car and bus sickness, or just get out and smell the fresh air will be eliminated since transit drivers must stay on a time schedule. Local groups oppose Yarts. The Yosemite Sierra Visitors Bureau, the Chambers of Commerce from Oakhurst, Bass Lake, Coarse Gold, and North Fork, and the Scenic Byway are all on record opposing Yarts because it will hurt local businesses and not provide benefits to eastern Madera County or Madera County as a whole. The National Park Service spin obsesses over pollution, congestion, and gridlock caused by cars. But the park administrators never discuss the thousands of parking spaces and campsites that they've arbitrarily removed with no accountability to the public, the same public, by the way, who pays their salaries and provides their budget. The truth is that congestion and gridlock are largely a manipulation of the Park Service, resulting from the removal of parking and road closures, coupled with the failure to aggressively implement low-cost and common-sense traffic management strategies. For those who do want to ride a bus or take a Yosemite tour, visitors or residents can choose numerous local private tour companies in the gateway communities or even from the Bay Area communities. You can look up numerous private tours on the internet. We need to be encouraging free market, private enterprise businesses to create a bus service, not a taxpayer-subsidized public transit system. In summary, Yarts is a taxpayer-funded boondoggle. It is a high-speed rail project on rubber tires. It is being used by the National Park Service as a way to eliminate visitor parking in Yosemite Valley against the desires of area residents, businesses, and visitors, while forcing taxpayers to pay for and ride a public transit system. It's at least 85% taxpayer subsidized. It will not benefit local communities. It facilitates conversion of Yosemite into an elitist experience. It does not protect the environment. It homogenizes the national park experience. It destroys freedom of access, and it doesn't address practical low-cost solutions for reducing park congestion. We don't need one more government-subsidized failure. So how do we stop this taxpayer-funded boondoggle? First, we need to educate the public on the issue. That's the purpose of this presentation. Make sure you send the URL for this presentation to your friends to become educated. Next, we must stop Yarts in Madera County. Currently, we have 2 supervisors of 5 who are against Yarts: Dave Rogers, District 2, and Rick Farinelli, District 3. Tom Wheeler, District 5, Max Rodriguez, District 4, and Manuel Nuvarez, District 1, are in favor. In the 2014 election, Ray Krause is running against Manuel Nuvarez, and Paul Kleiby is running against Tom Wheeler. Both Ray and Paul are on record as opposing Yarts, so it is critical that we get them elected. That will give us a 4-to-1 majority to defeat this nonsense. Next, public involvement. The public must continue to speak before the Madera Board of Supervisors and the Fresno Council of Government, demanding that Yarts be defunded and turned over to a private enterprise if busing is desired. We must continue to participate in the Merced River Plan comment process. We must insist that the General Management Plan be amended to remove the language calling for the elimination of all private vehicle access to Yosemite Valley. Don't believe it when a politician tells you that they intend to allow private vehicles into Yosemite Valley, as their word has no authority. Until the GMP language is eliminated, the National Park Service will continue to push for the elimination of all private vehicle access to Yosemite Valley. We need to urge the Park Service to environmentally work into the Merced River Plan the thousands of parking spaces in Yosemite Valley that were both lost in the 1997 flood as well as incrementally removed over the past 30 years. Remind them that Congress awarded the nearly $200 million flood appropriation to return the park to its pre-damage condition. We must demand that the National Park Service put together a practical congestion plan using simple solutions. Furthermore, we must let our state and federal legislators know that Yarts must not be funded with taxpayers' money. Defund the entire Yarts program, starting with preventing it from taking place on the Highway 41 corridor and eventually banning it on Highway 140 and 120. Additionally, using taxpayer dollars to fund public transit in the national parks and giving federal employees free vouchers to ride to work must come to an end. We need to support a free market system of short-range transit using private buses operated by private entrepreneurs to bus people into the park who want to take buses. Thanks for taking the time to view this presentation. Please send the link for this presentation to others who feel the same way, or post it on your social media. To become even more informed on this issue, you can go to the URL displayed on your screen to attend a free 47-minute detailed training presentation on this topic. By getting involved, together we can defeat this boondoggle.